One of the main concerns I've seen popping up over the internet since we've been getting more news on the Final Fantasy VII Remake at E3 this year is the concept of the first game being solely based around the city of Midgar. Now, I'm sure many of you will recall that in the original Final Fantasy VII, that section of the game, the opening that involved the city of Midgar, was really only about half of the first disc, and the game itself covered 3 discs in total. So it was only probably about a sixth or so of the overall game. We do return to Midgar later in the game, but it's a different part of the city. But a lot of people are just concerned, I think, and I understand this. Initially, I also had these concerns as to how a section of the game, the original game, that literally just takes up about a sixth of the experience, can then itself be ballooned up into a full game in and of itself. And Square have already confirmed for us, of course, many times now, that the Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be the size of a proper Final Fantasy game. That sounds wrong, of course, this is a proper Final Fantasy game, but the size of any other Final Fantasy game. So I'm guessing we can expect 30 to 40 hours of story content, plus however many hours of optional content as well. So how are they going to do that without the game feeling like we're just confined into such a small space?
I feel trapped.
Because if you try to expand the city of Midgar from Final Fantasy VII, the original game, into a 40 plus hour experience, it wouldn't work. Okay, that I don't even think is controversial. That just would not work. There is not enough there in order to do that. And I think that's the kind of baggage that Square are having to try and argue through, that we're all bringing to the context that kind of influences our thoughts as to how this is going to work. But I think we need to try and understand how Square are approaching this in order to realise that that's not what is going to be happening. From what they've told us, it's not going to be a case of 3 to 5 hours of content from the original being puffed up into a full experience. It's actually a lot more than that. First of all, I just want to clarify that the actual idea, the concept of a game being set in a dystopian city is not in itself a bad thing. Think of another game right now that everybody's talking about. Cyberpunk itself is set in a dystopian city in the state of California. And everybody's on board with that, as indeed I think they should be. It looks fantastic. But when it comes to this Final Fantasy VII Remake project, the thought of having to spend a whole game in a city such as Midgar seems to be something that people aren't quite on board with. And I think, as I say earlier, that has everything to do more with the fact that the original game version of Midgar would not be able to present that, and it would not be able to hold up to that. And we're basically translating our nostalgia from the original game and our memories of the original game into the remake there, when Square have always said that's not the way it's going to be. This is going to be built from the ground up with these experiences in mind. It's a different context than just thinking of the 3 to 5 hour experience of the original Midgar in Final Fantasy VII. For example, Midgar is a massive, massive city, and it's not really represented like that, or rather it is represented like that in Final Fantasy VII, but it's not really seen by the player in Final Fantasy VII in all of its glory. We literally just get glimpses of it. Those, points that we go to between the map in a very linear fashion is literally all we get to see in the original game of Midgar. The fact that it's been designed in various sectors, etc., as far as I'm concerned, just plays perfectly into the idea that this could be an open world game. I really believe that that is the direction that Square need to be taking this, and could very well be doing so. We know that the city of in Cyberpunk, for example, is an open world city that's split into various sectors, and assuming you'll be able to travel between them, completing various story quests or whatever the case may be, or bonus objectives and side quests as you see fit. And I see the same thing working here in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I honestly believe that what we're going to be seeing is a full map of Midgar, and once we've unlocked it, we'll literally be able to travel all over this place, where there's going to be all kinds of manner of story objectives, side quests, and just all bonus things that we'll be able to do, and just invest many hours into that experience. And don't forget, guys, there's so many different environments in Midgar as well. I've mentioned this before. Not only have you got all the slums and the areas that we've seen previously in Final Fantasy VII, and of course the Shinra headquarters, which is itself a huge focal point of the city, but you've also got all the areas above the plate as well, where all the rich and famous, I guess, get to live. And it would be such a contrasting environment to what it is that we're used to seeing under the plate, that there's just so much there that we can explore, and that I hope Square will allow us to explore, that if they do this right, you could probably get the city of Midgar spread over 2 or 3 games. And I'm not trying to give Square any ideas there, we do need to advance the story a little bit, but the very thought of it being condensed into one game, I don't think is a bad thing. I don't see it as a negative at all. I actually see it as a Final Fantasy VII fan, as a positive, that we're really going to be able to just flesh out this impressive city that, let's be honest, in the original game, as fantastic as it was, we never really got to see it in all of its glory, did we? We never really got to see it fleshed out as a city. We only got to see the limited linear experiences that the game needed us to progress through. So let's assume, I think this makes sense, that the opening of the remake will be the same pretty much as the opening of the original Final Fantasy VII, and that is the bombing mission on Sector 1. I think in order to appease the fans and just to show everybody that this is a Final Fantasy VII game after all, that makes sense that it is going to open in a linear fashion like that. I could be wrong, but I suspect that is going to be the case. But in the original Final Fantasy VII, you defeat the Guard Scorpion, you blow up the reactor, and then Avalanche, that's the the terrorist group of which Cloud as a mercenary is a part of, split up, and you meet up with them later on in Sector 7, I think it is. Now, in between going from the bombing mission, the end of the bombing mission, to Sector 7, you make your way through Sector 8. That's where you meet up with Aerith, the flower girl. Now, what if in the remake, you don't have to rush from the end of the bombing mission to the headquarters of Avalanche in Sector 7? What if you can explore Sector 8 for a little bit, for example? This is just an example. What if you can go around? We did actually see gameplay footage, I believe, of Cloud exploring Sector 8 by himself. It looked almost certainly like it happened after that first bombing mission. And you can just go around, speak to people, start side quests, begin bonus objectives, whatever the case may be. Maybe even spend several hours completing and tinkering various objectives and stuff, and starting to collect trophies and achievements, whatever the case may be, and start to explore the map in that region. And I'm guessing each sector is going to be presented to us as a lot bigger than the sectors were presented in the original game. And then when you're ready, you can move on to Sector 7 and then, you know, choose to advance the story from that point and continue on with the second reactor bombing. So I don't think we're going to have to play the game in such a linear fashion. And eventually, of course, the other sectors of Midgar are going to open up to us. And we'll have a whole lot we can explore, with a whole lot of objectives that we can go ahead and try and meet and beat. A whole lot of side quests, a whole lot of people to discover, and things and objects and everything else, as is typical for any open world game. A lot of collectibles to collect. And on top of that, of course, we've got above the plate as well. We have seen that in one of the trailers for Final Fantasy VII Remake, with the motorway and just all the buildings up there and everything else. And everything looks a lot different up there than it does down below. We've got such a huge city at our fingertips, and so many opportunities for exploration and good stories to be told, that I really hope that Square present it to us in this way. And I think if they do, a lot of us that were sceptical, including myself, about Midgar being the focus of an entire game, will actually come to realise, I'm really hoping this is going to be the case, will come to realise that this was a good idea, because Midgar will seem just so much bigger to us then than what we got in the original game. And I've got to say, from what we've seen so far, I really believe this is the direction that Square are taking us in, and I am very excited to see how it all pans out. But as always, guys, please do share your thoughts in the comment section. Are you coming on board with the idea of the Final Fantasy VII Remake being set around Midgar only? Or is that something that you just can't really help but be sceptical of? Really interested in hearing your opinions on this, guys. I know it's a divisive subject, so make sure you play nice in the comment section, please. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.